Would the Royals ever trade Cole Ragans if the deal was right? We'll give you our thoughts next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals in the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That is at JOHNYJ_15. And you can listen to us on wherever you download your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit the follow button and subscribe. For you first-time listeners wondering what to expect each and every week from this channel, well, from now until December 15th, we will be bringing you 5 episodes a week. So coming up in about 2 weeks, we'll be dropping down to 3 episodes a week, but that'll only last for about a month and a half because right as spring training rolls around, that's when we'll gear back up for 5 episodes a week, and you're going to be getting that for the rest of the year. Now, before we get started, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. As we said that in 2 weeks, we'll be dropping down to 3 episodes a week. It doesn't always mean we're going to be staying to 3 episodes a week because in 2 weeks, it'll be the winter meetings when some deals, really start to be brought to everybody's attention. Maybe some deals actually happen. The hot stove, as I should say, heats up. And the Royals might be one of those teams that are involved in a big-time deal during the winter meetings or shortly after. So even though we'll have 3 episodes, if there's a deal that's happened and we've already had 3 episodes that week, we got no issue doing 4 or 5 to meet that requirement of just making sure that everybody will be taken care of on this channel. And one deal that we're going to be discussing in this first episode or first segment today and first episode of the week is the one that was rumored to maybe be discussed, over the last couple of weeks, which involved the Boston Red Sox and your Kansas City Royals. We know that the Royals and Red Sox match up on paper very, very well. The Red Sox have a couple of outfielders they would be looking to move if they got controllable starting pitching. The Royals have controllable starting pitching. And if they are going to deal with Boston, it's not going to be for a true 4 or 5 outfielder, or 4th or 5th outfielder, I should say. It'll be for a Jarren Duran or a Wilyer Abreu. And depending on what the return would be, maybe even more than that. But the article that was floated out by the Boston Globe that, J.J. Picollo was quoted in this article that, nobody is really off limits on their roster, which I feel is the right way to go about it. I feel deep down there are untouchables, guys that you would have to just give up basically, top prospects in your system and star players on your big league roster. That to me is untouchable, right? You don't need to say that Bobby Witt Jr. is untouchable. You can just say everybody's on the table here. We have to be blown away by an offer. It's kind of that way of negotiating. And Cole Ragans appeared to be one of those guys that was off limits, but also not quite in the same category as Bobby Witt Jr. I feel if Boston approached Kansas City with a deal that involved Jarren Duran, you have Peyton Tolley too, who got called up late in the season, can run it up at 100. You have is it Connolly Ely, I believe, who started in the wild card game. A 21, 22-year-old left-hander that was on their postseason roster and starting an elimination game, and they threw in a Christian Campbell. I know that's way too much for Boston, which we already discussed in last night's episode, our very late edition of a Mailbag Sunday. But that's what I'm hinting at here with Cole Ragans. No, the Royals, in my opinion, would be foolish to turn down a deal like that if they got 2 high upside, controllable starting pitchers, Jarren Duran, and then some for Cole Ragans. As much as the Royals love Cole Ragans, as much as I love Cole Ragans, everybody that listens to this podcast love Cole Ragans and know the upside of him. You get 3 or 4 players in return, you can't turn that away. But that leads us back into this point of how likely is that really? And I would say that's incredibly unlikely. So even though I might have just put a lot of hope out there in the first 5 minutes of this episode, it's why it's leading me to believe, Cole Ragans is not going to be involved with the deal in the Boston Red Sox, or going to be involved in any discussions, or I should say deep discussions. He can be involved in discussions, but not ones that go further than let's toss out some names here. Because Boston may have their sights set on Cole Ragans, and they could have their sights set on Cole Ragans for months. Eventually, somebody's going to have to cave in to that deal, or these sides are going to go their separate ways, and they're going to try to upgrade elsewhere. I mean, it's early enough in the offseason where you can shoot for the moon. We used the analogy last night of when you go into your boss's office and you're asking for a raise, you don't immediately ask what you were expecting to make or what it was going to be dwindled down to. You ask for maybe 20,000 more than you were expecting, or 30,000 more. And to me, that's what both Kansas City and Boston are doing in these discussions. If you're the Royals, why not throw out there, we'll want Jarren Duran, but we're only going to give you Stephen Kolek. Right? And Boston's going to say no to that. And they're going to say, well, if you want Jarren Duran, we want Cole Ragans and we want Blake Mitchell. You're going to turn that down in a heartbeat. So you kind of go back and forth and see which side might cave in a little bit, which side might get desperate. And I don't see either of these sides being desperate, but what the asking price has been, on both of these sides, it's been astronomical. Well, let's all be very real here. These have not been trades even thrown out there on Twitter, whether it be a burner account, it be a reporter, it just be, somebody on MLB Network throwing out what they may like. None of those deals really line up, because a player is never as valuable as their own fans, and sometimes even their own GMs think they are. Right? Cole Ragans is a tremendous talent. The Royals will always be able to have that badge of trading a aged Aroldis Chapman, who threw 30 innings for the Royals, for Cole Ragans, who then won them a playoff start single-handedly, and was a big part in them moving on to the ALDS, and was a big part they were even in the postseason in the first place. But you're a team like Boston, and you'll say, well, that was great, and that's what we hope for if we got Cole Ragans, right? If we had this blockbuster deal and we were able to land a guy like him, we're looking to 2024 and that version of him and saying, do that again in 2026. There's also the reality he's a 2025 version of himself, and he's banged up. He has 2 separate injuries. The ERA was over 5 for the majority of the time that he was healthy-ish, right? So that's why I'm saying, Cole Ragans, as great as he is the ace of this baseball team, and I expect him to be the Royals' opening day starter in Atlanta coming up in March. Like I've not wavered on that even in the slightest. But if you're the Royals, you're not, asking around the league and what they may give up for Cole Ragans, and you're not going to be treating him like Paul Skeens or Tarek Skubal. Even though Cole Ragans was closer to Tarek Skubal in 2024, he's not going into 2026. So that's why I'm saying for most teams out there, you can say, they're absolutely untouchable. We're not moving them. But you need to listen to offers out there. And that's what I think the Royals may be doing, and what JJ Picollo is meaning in that statement of, nobody's off the table. We're going to listen to any offer out there. It doesn't mean that discussion needs to go any further than names being brought up, as we already touched on. But I can tell you with pretty firm confidence here that he's not going to be involved in a trade. I feel that they want Cole Ragans to be their ace in 2026. You saw him recapture that a little bit at the very tail end of 2025. It shows you how incredibly hard he worked to get back out there on the mound. And the Royals like to build around a guy like that. And if I'm being brutally honest here, he's the only one in the rotation that has true ace stuff. Chris Bubich has really good stuff. Noah Cameron has really good stuff. It's not power ace stuff, where in October you say, you're going up against Aaron Judge. I need you to be throwing 97 to 99 with devastating stuff. He's the only guy in the rotation that has that. The Royals can acknowledge that. Where he feels like, to me, the guy you can't replace in the rotation. I look at Chris Bubich. I feel that Noah Cameron could replace him. Same goes for Noah Cameron. If you traded Noah Cameron, I feel Chris Bubic could replace him, and Ryan Berger could replace the spot that Chris Bubic is moving up from. With Cole Ragans, it's different, right? And for those asking about, why are they not entertaining any deals with Michael Wacha and Seth Lugo, it's not that they are so tied to them and there's no way they can move on. I'm sure that they care about those two, and they are so instrumental in working with these young guys. I'm not saying that they don't do anything around there, and I'm not trying to overreact to a poor end to their 2025 season, but they're under contract. They're a little bit older. You're not getting the return that you're wanting for Wacha or Lugo, which is why I don't believe they're seriously entertaining moving either of those guys, along with them being good mentors for the pitching staff. To me, I keep circling back to it's either Noah Cameron or it's Chris Bubic or maybe Ryan Berger and Stephen Kolek. The Red Sox can want Cole Ragans all they want. If they want Cole Ragans, they are going to have to move heaven and earth to get him. And I don't see the Red Sox doing that. Therefore, I believe they are just going to move on to another team if they really want that number one or number two for their rotation. Because I don't see the Royals being that team to give them Cole Ragans when these two are going to be battling out for a wild card spot or as the postseason spot in general come October of next year. Do you believe the Royals will seriously consider moving Cole Ragans this offseason? Let us know in the YouTube comments below. When we come back, one guy that has been linked to the Royals more than anybody has been Harrison Bader. Do we believe the two sides will match up on a deal? I'll give you my thoughts next on Locked On Royals. You are tuning to Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can listen to us on wherever you download your podcasts. Want to tell you about one of two sponsors today in FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's why making live betting with FanDuel can be so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place live bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Even on Thanksgiving, I put a 5-leg parlay down on the Chiefs and Cowboys. I came up 1 leg short, but you're betting on Thanksgiving. To me, it doesn't get much better than that. You get a little extra money. I didn't win the money, but it's still fun to follow along on the games when you have something cooking up, and certainly have it cooking up over on FanDuel. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your live NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All this talk about trades, Jarren Duran, Cole Ragans, Noah Cameron, Chris Bubic, Wilyer Abreu, Joe Adell, right? We've circulated through all these names. Brendan Donovan's another one I should bring up. But there's still a high likelihood the first move that the Royals make would be through free agency. Maybe it is a trade, but to me, I feel the easiest thing you could do going into the winter meetings is picking up a few guys in free agency. Round out the bottom half of your roster and then put all the eggs in the basket of landing that everyday left fielder. And speaking of outfielders, one name that I have seen linked to the Royals more than anybody has been Harrison Bader. Now, Bader coming off a really good year between Minnesota and Philadelphia, thought there might have been a chance that he'd go back to Philadelphia. He posted on Instagram not long after the season had ended, kind of saying his goodbyes to Philly, and that made it seem like they're not going to bring him back. It was a nice rental deal. Now he's going to test the free agent market, and Philadelphia is going to go in a different direction. Then we got the reports that Philadelphia would like him back. How truthful that really is, I guess we'll wait and see. And the closer we get to winter meetings, we very well could have our answer. The reason Bader is linked to the Royals is not a surprise whatsoever. I mean, every article I read on ESPN, The Athletic, former Royals beat reporter Andy McCullough, who just was phenomenal in his time here, and I still read his stuff as much as I can. He picked, one free agent that fits with each team. It was Harrison Bader. Mark Feinstein's one free agent fit for every team. It was Harrison Bader for the Royals. And though I saw some pushback on Twitter from fans of, he's a right-handed Kyle Isbell, he's only done it for 1 year. Don't sign him. He'll only be, the bad version of himself in Kansas City. There are a lot of reasons to like a matchup with the Royals and Harrison Bader. The first being, incredible defense. I mean, there could be times in your outfield where you have Harrison Bader and Kyle Isbell in right and center field. I mean, that's one of the best two spots in the outfield, or two best defenders you could have at those positions. And in a cavernous ballpark like Kauffman Stadium, that plays very well, right? So you replace Jack Caglione late in the game with Harrison Bader. I like the way that outfield looks, and depending on who you get in left field, you might have one of the better defensive outfields in the game. But we'll have to wait and see what all three guys look like if they choose to go that route. Offensively, Harrison Bader is more of a successful right-handed hitter, against righties than he is against lefties, at least last year. In fact, he was hitting 300 or better against righties in 2025 and was in the low 220s, I believe, against lefties. Didn't make too much sense, but I could also see a world in which the Royals want to bring him in, and he's the platoon bat or the right-handed bat to complement Jack Caglione in right field over a Rob Refsnyder or an Austin Hayes. And we can say, he's only done it for 1 year, which I push back on. Harrison Bader had good years, prior to 2023 and 2022. He had a fine career in St. Louis before he struggled at the very end and then bounced around a little bit. But when you're looking at platoon bats, which I view Harrison Bader as a platoon bat, that's what you're going to run into. If you had somebody that had 3 consecutive good years, like really good years, offensively, was a good defender, they would be an everyday outfielder looking for a big-time contract. I feel Harrison Bader is looking for a 2-year deal, probably in that ballpark of 10 to 12 million. And that really fits a need for the Royals. Harrison Bader, by far and away, would have been the best outfielder for the Royals last season. It is a very low bar to clear, but Harrison Bader has felt like a Royal for so long. I thought that he was a guy last offseason I would have given a shot to. Hindsight's 2020. We all know that. I didn't know Harrison Bader was going to have an OBP of 350 something, was going to hit over 300 against right-handed pitching, was going to be one of the best. Well, I knew he'd be a pretty good defensive center fielder, but one of the better defending center fielders, for both the Twins and then also Philadelphia in a postseason chase. And the Phillies loved him, which is why they want to bring him back still. If you're Kansas City, though, you can't always get picky about the outfielders you're going for. Otherwise, you're going to be left in the dust. I mean, if there was a world in which the Royals signed Harrison Bader and Bader took over center field responsibilities over Kyle Isbell, are you complaining that much? To me, I'm not. Because the big reason you have Kyle Isbell in center field is because of his defense. And he has shown in his career that he's not going to be an above-average bat. He just screams fourth outfielder to me, which is totally fine. If Kyle Isbell copy-pastes his 2025 into 2026 in fewer games and is this team's fourth outfielder, I believe it is an incredibly valuable spot for him. And if he's replaced by Harrison Bader, I feel that raises the floor of this team and raises the floor of the outfield. You're not losing the defensive prowess out there. You could be getting even better in center field, and you are getting better offensively, right? It's one thing to be pessimistic and say, well, Harrison Bader was good last year. He's bound to have a down year this coming year. You can view it that way. But even in a down year for Harrison Bader, based off what he did last year, I feel would be fine for this Royals outfield. Worst case scenario, he's Kyle Isbell. And yeah, you might be paying him 10 to 12 million, which is more than you're giving Izzy. But to me, it might be worth that gamble. I feel there's a reason Harrison Bader is being linked to the Royals over and over and over again. He can handle center field at Kauffman Stadium. And what if he follows up his 2025 season with a similar year in 2026? You're getting a very good bargain in center field. And assuming the Royals still get a left fielder that they want, now you have Bader putting up those numbers. You've got Caglione, hopefully can bounce back after a poor rookie season, and then a left fielder who you expect to be your big get of the offseason. To me, that feels like logical thinking in the offseason. I wouldn't be opposed to Rob Refsnyder. I really wouldn't. Or an Austin Hayes, right? Guys that are true platoon guys who can hammer left-handed pitching. But are you going to get the defensive upside? You're not going to. Not like you can with Harrison Bader. And to me, that matters to the Royals. It absolutely matters. And if you don't think it does, go to some games late last year where you might have not had the best defensive right fielder, or you had some mistakes in center because Kyle Isbell was banged up and he wasn't playing. Imagine having an outfield that in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning, you could have Bader in center and Isbell in right. Two elite defenders who can handle that side and make the game-changing play, be able to run stuff down in the gap. It is a cavernous right center field, as we all know. And if you got Harrison Bader and the bat to go with it, you already know the defense is going to be good. That's the downside for Harrison Bader, would be a poor offensive season, but still a great defensive season. And we've made cases for Adolis Garcia for that exact same reason. He was way worse offensively than Bader last year, elite defensively in right field. Would you rather have Garcia or would you rather have Harrison Bader? To me, I feel that Harrison Bader would be a better fit and probably has better upside, though, on a 2-year deal than giving Adolis Garcia a 2-year deal. Do you feel that the Royals should give a deal to Harrison Bader? If not, who would you like to see them give a deal to for that platoon bat in right field, or just a right-handed outfielder? Definitely let us know in the YouTube comments below or reach out to us on Twitter. We're going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, speaking of right-handed outfielders, the Royals could line up with the Astros for a trade for this bat. Who is that bat? We'll tell you next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals in the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. Want to tell you about the title sponsor in Gametime. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Gametime app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Gametime, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets in every match, concert, or event with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. Again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go, and download Gametime today. The other right-handed options that the Royals could look to in free agency are not, I guess, as intriguing as someone like Harrison Bader. If you go after a Rob Refsnyder in free agency or an Austin Hayes, I feel it'd be a good upgrade for your bench. You have someone who can really only face left-handed pitching, where I feel with Bader, you could eventually get a starter. I'm not sure I would ever view, Austin Hayes and Rob Refsnyder as somebody that could take over an outfield spot, which is why I'd lean a little bit more toward Harrison Bader. But I understand the pushback too. You have a guy that wasn't good whatsoever in 2024. He catches on with Minnesota and Philadelphia. Yeah, he might have changed things for good, and now he's going to have a very good age 31, 32, and 33 season, or he was a one-hit wonder in the back half of his career. He breaks out in 2025, gets a big contract, and then never gets a big contract after that. So the Royals could be scared away by that. Why would we give somebody who may not even be our opening day center fielder or right fielder, give him a 2-year deal worth $12 million a year? Why would we do that to ourselves when we could go another route? We could get somebody on a 1-year deal worth $5 million or $6 million. Or they could go the trade route as well. And to me, it feels that those options are limited, but they're possible. And a name that I do have to give credit, I believe it was Cody on Twitter that showed me this. And then this morning I was able to look on some of the MLB accounts and saw that Jake Meyers of the Houston Astros is a name to watch for the winter meetings. Now, the Astros have an outfield that isn't where they once were, but they're definitely going to be better going into 2026. You've got Cam Smith, who really had a fine rookie season, really started the season well, and then kind of tailed off toward the end. But they're looking to get a little bit younger, maybe have more upside. Chas McCormick was a guy that patrolled that outfield for a number of years. Jake Meyers, another one, and a guy like Harrison Bader, who's coming off a pretty good season, is very good defensively in center field, has the speed, and is, close to age 30, if not a few years under that or a few years over that. I mean, Bader's 31, and I believe Jake Meyers is 29. So even though he's approaching his age 30 season, he's got some suitors for sure. And in this article on The Athletic, where I believe it was Will Salmon and Katie Wu, if not, it was Ken Rosenthal that might have been a part of this article, but mentioned the Royals as one of those teams to watch, looking for a right-handed outfielder. That is what Jake Meyers is. He hit .294 last year, had an OPS plus of 103, so slightly above league average. Now, by all accounts, kind of matches what the Royals would be looking for, not as their solution, not as their fix. And I do want to be clear, too, when it comes to Harrison Bader. He ain't the fix either. He's not the solution. He's just a part of the solution. Same goes for Jake Meyers. You would have somebody that significantly raises the floor of your outfield, gives Kyle Isbell and Jack Caglione a nice right-handed bat to complement him a little bit, but he's not going to be somebody that alters your lineup. There will be days that he gives you a little bit of a boost. There will be days that, you play him a couple games in a row. There will be weeks where you play him a couple games in a row. But he's also not just that permanent player in the lineup. And the Astros, I should have, added this at the beginning part of my segment. They're looking for starting pitching and controllable starting pitching, which the Royals do have. Another reason why I'm sure they would be linked to a guy like Jake Meyers. But here's the hang up for me. If you were approached with the option A being Harrison Bader, option B being Jake Meyers, and on one side, it's you can have Harrison Bader for 2 years of $24 million. That would be the contract. That would be the deal. Or you can have Jake Meyers, who isn't a free agent until 2028. So you have him for 2 more years, cheaper than Harrison Bader, but you got to give up a Stephen Kolek, or you got to give up a Ryan Bergert. To me, that feels a bit steep for a guy like Jake Meyers, but those are the options the Royals have starting pitching-wise. I mean, you're not trading Chris Bubich to Houston for a guy that's not even an everyday center fielder. I mean, I guess for a period of time he was in Houston, and he very well could be in Kansas City. But he, feels to me like one of those stopgap guys, truthfully. I'm not sure you make that deal and say he's the guy you are just penciling into that lineup from now until 2028. I feel it'd be, more of a platoon situation. And are you willing to give up starting pitching with multiple years of control for a guy like him? We hit .294 last year, so he can hit for average. He's got speed. He's a good defender, and he's cheaper than Harrison Bader. But that's what I'm weighing here. Is it better to spend the money there where maybe that's your big deal in free agency, or would you rather hang on to that money, use it on a bullpen piece or two, and then make a trade and move one of those starters for a right-handed outfielder like Jake Meyers? He, like Harrison Bader, feels very Royal. He's a name that we have not brought up, I believe, even before this episode. I know that he's been asked about in a Mailbag Friday, but on our own, without the help of our listeners, I don't believe I brought him up more than once unless it was in a post-game recap. But to me, when I saw that, I went, that's just the trade version of Harrison Bader. He's got a little bit better baseball savant page if you're into that. Like the batted ball metrics are a little bit better than Bader's. And, these are guys that have been around baseball for a long time. Harrison Bader and Jake Meyers have had multiple good years at the big league level. Jake Meyers also, prior to 2025, had 2 really poor seasons in Houston where he was just known for defense. And he wasn't racking up 150, 160 games. Neither was Harrison Bader. So I found that very intriguing that literally on the trade side, there is a equivalent to Harrison Bader. Hits for more average. Bader, hits for a little bit more pop. At least he did last year. But both could be very elite defensively and center fielder. Do you feel the Royals should try to make a move for Jake Meyers of the Houston Astros? Let us know in the YouTube comments below. Well, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every day. For your second listen, find the Locked On MLB podcast where there is no offseason. Sully keeps you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed baseball fan. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Tomorrow we'll be bringing you a much earlier episode in the afternoon, but until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.